The comms officer sent an encrypted hail. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Imperial fleet. Identify yourself." No answer. A second transmission followed, this time using older broadcast codes, even the ancient Terran sequence found in archives. Still nothing. The ship simply hovered. Then, without warning, a soft pulse of light rippled from its hull. "Energy spike!" shouted an officer. "Unknown frequency." Rail's hand hovered over the control panel, ready to order shields raised. But the pulse wasn't an attack, it was a signal. Across every Imperial screen, a short sound played, a deep hum followed by a voice. Calm, human. "We are not your enemy," it said. "We are your origin." Every crew member froze. The voice was clear, real, and undeniably human. Commander Varen, now aboard the Dominion, stared at the speaker. Arvin's heart pounded so hard he could barely hear. The Admiral broke the silence. "Trace that transmission." "Sir, it's being broadcast on multiple dimensions of frequency, subspace, light, gravity waves, it's everywhere." "Translate the rest." "There's more coming through," said Arvin quietly. "Listen." The voice returned, slower now, almost echoing through the ship's metal halls. "You built an empire. You conquered stars. But you forgot who you were." "We never did." Silence followed. Then the unknown ship turned, aligning itself with the Dominion's position. "Targeting lock?" asked one officer. "None detected," another replied. The vessel drifted closer until it filled the viewports with its shining hull. Admiral Rael's voice was calm but cold. "Ready weapons. If it crosses our boundary, fire warning shots." Commander Varen looked uneasy. "Sir, that might provoke—" "Do it," Rael ordered. The Dominion fired a light beam across the ship's path. It wasn't a strike, just a warning. But the unknown craft didn't react. Instead, it released a low-frequency wave that passed through every ship in the fleet. For a moment, every engine, weapon, and control panel shut down. Total silence. Then just as suddenly, everything powered back on. No damage, no trace. Only one message appeared on every screen. "We came to remind you." Admiral Rael clenched his fists. "Remind us of what?" he muttered. But deep down, he already knew. The humans, if they were humans, were not seeking war. They were reminding the galaxy who had started it all. The ship began to move again, slow at first, then accelerating to impossible speed. In seconds, it vanished, leaving a faint trail of blue light behind. Varen stood beside Arvin, both silent. "Sir," Arvin said finally, "we can't track them. They're gone." "Not gone," Varen whispered. "Just ahead of us. Always ahead." In the following hours, Command debated what to do. Some wanted to declare war on this mysterious power. Others argued it was pointless to fight what they couldn't even find. The Empress demanded answers. But all they had was a single message, still echoing through the data logs. "We came to remind you." Arvin stared at the flickering screen. His heart felt heavy, but also alive with wonder. Somewhere out there, the people they all came from had returned. Not as conquerors, but as something far greater. The Empire had always believed it ruled the stars. But now every star seemed to whisper a different truth. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never sleep easily again. The imperial capital of Orion Prime never slept. Floating cities circled its glowing oceans, and silver spires pierced the sky like the proud fingers of a civilization that thought itself eternal. Yet beneath that pride, whispers now spread faster than light. Across markets, ships, and council halls, one name returned again and again: the unknown vessel. Commander Varen had returned from Array 9 only 2 days ago, but he felt like years had passed. He stood before the Imperial Council now, facing 12 members dressed in gleaming white robes, each one representing a world of the Empire. Behind them shimmered a holographic projection, the image of the unidentified ship, silent and silver, suspended in darkness. Counselor Tyra leaned forward, voice sharp. "You mean to say this? Craft disabled 30 warships with a single pulse without causing any damage?" "Yes, Counselor," Varen replied evenly. "It neutralized our systems, then reactivated them in seconds. No aggression, no destruction." Another counselor, a tall man named Wren, slammed his hand on the desk. "Then it was a threat. A show of power. Or a warning," Varen said quietly. The room went silent. Only the hum of the hologram filled the chamber. The Empress watched from her throne, her golden eyes unblinking. "What of the voice?" she asked softly. "The one that spoke." Varen glanced down at his datapad. "Our analysis confirms it was human." The chamber erupted in noise, disbelief, laughter, and fear mixing together like a storm. Human? One shouted. Myth and nonsense. Humans destroyed themselves long ago. No, the files prove it, another argued. The original settlers of the core were human descendants. The Empress raised her hand, and silence returned instantly. Her voice was calm but cold as space. Commander, what was the message? They said, "We came to remind you." The Empress's gaze hardened. Remind us of what? Varen hesitated, then said quietly, "Perhaps who we are." A murmur spread through the council again. The Empress dismissed Varen with a slow wave of her hand. "You may go, Commander. Leave the data with my scholars." Outside the council hall, Varen exhaled deeply. The corridors were lined with portraits of past emperors, proud, perfect, untouchable. Yet, for the first time, he looked at them and wondered if the Empire's history was built on a lie. Meanwhile, far across the system, Admiral Rail paced inside the command bridge of the ISS Dominion. He had not slept since the encounter. Every hour he reviewed the sensor data, looking for clues, for weakness, for something to understand. But there was nothing. The unknown ship had left no energy signature, no trace, as if it had never existed. His second-in-command, Captain Soren, approached quietly. "Sir, there's unrest in the lower decks. The crew is talking. Some say it was a ghost, others say it was divine." Rail glared at him. "It was technology, Captain. Nothing more." "With respect, sir," Soren replied. "Technology far beyond anything we've seen." The Admiral turned away. "We will find them again, and when we do, I'll tear that ship apart piece by piece." But before he could speak further, the main screen flickered. A signal appeared. Not from Imperial Command, not from any known beacon. The same pulsing pattern that had once haunted Array 9 now flashed across the Dominion systems. "Signal detected," said an officer. "It's weak, but it's definitely the same source. Origin? Unknown. But it's inside Imperial space." Rail's jaw tightened. "Get me coordinates." The ship turned toward a distant nebula at the edge of the sector. Clouds of purple gas swirled in the void like smoke from an ancient fire. The fleet followed cautiously, sensors locked. As they entered the mist, static filled the comms. The signal grew stronger. Then, from within the glowing dust, a shape emerged. The same silver vessel, floating as if it had been waiting for them. "Visual confirmed," said the officer. "It's them. Ready all weapons," Rail ordered. Commander Varen, who had rejoined the fleet under orders to observe, stepped forward. "Admiral, if you attack, we might lose any chance to communicate." Rail's eyes flashed. "You think they want peace? They humiliated our fleet." "Then maybe we should ask why," Varen said calmly. Before Rail could respond, the voice returned. "This is not your war." Everyone froze. The words came through every channel, every speaker, even through the vibrations in the metal walls. The tone was calm, steady, unmistakably human. "This is not your empire," the voice continued. "It is ours." Rail's fury broke. "Identify yourself," he shouted. "You are violating Imperial territory." But the voice ignored him. Instead, the unknown ship began to project an image into space. A massive hologram formed above the nebula, thousands of years of history flashing before their eyes. Old Earth cities, oceans, human faces, laughter, wars, the first starships, the first colonies. Arvin, standing near the console, whispered, "That's us," and the final image froze on a group of early explorers standing beneath a blue sky. The same symbol that had flashed before Earth glowed behind them. Then the voice spoke again, softer now. "We left to survive. You built an empire from our ashes, but you forgot what it means to be human." Rail's voice trembled with rage. "You're claiming to be our ancestors?" The voice paused. "No, we are what you were meant to be." Before anyone could react, the silver ship sent a burst of light across the nebula. It wasn't a weapon. It was a pulse of pure energy, passing harmlessly through every vessel. But it carried a message in binary code. When decrypted, it read, "The return begins." Then the ship disappeared once more, leaving only the faint echo of its words. The bridge fell silent. No one spoke. No one could. Varen turned slowly toward Rail. "Admiral, I don't think they're our enemy." Rail clenched his jaw. "Then what are they?" "Judges," Varen said quietly, "and we've just been found guilty." When the fleet returned to Orion Prime, the Empress demanded answers. But all they could show her was the message. The council grew restless. Some wanted to declare war, others to surrender. The citizens whispered in the streets. Statues of old emperors were defaced with a single word carved into the marble: Earth. Far above the planet, hidden in the darkness, another signal flickered to life. But this time it wasn't coming toward the Empire, it was spreading outward toward the entire galaxy. You said. And somewhere beyond the stars, a fleet of similar ships began to awaken, silent, unseen, and waiting. The humans had returned, and the Empire's age of comfort was over. The Empress did not sleep that night. From the highest tower of the Imperial Citadel, she stood before the vast glass window overlooking Orion Prime's oceans. The planet glowed with the light of billions, yet for the first time in centuries, the Empress felt that light dim. The word Earth haunted her. It carried a weight older than the Empire itself, a name pulled from the dust of forgotten legends. Far below her, panic spread quietly. The news had escaped containment despite every security order. Across colonies and mining worlds, citizens whispered of a lost species returning. The first humans, the ones who had vanished before the Empire's birth. Some believed they were gods. Others said they had come for vengeance. In the war room, Admiral Rael stood stiff beside Commander Varen and Technician Arvin, summoned directly by the Empress. The council members filled the circular hall, tension humming in the air like a storm about to break. The Empress entered silently. Her robes shimmered silver, and her gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. "Tell me," she began, "how one ship can shake an empire." No one answered. She turned toward Arvin. "You saw it first. Speak." Arvin swallowed hard. "Majesty, the ship doesn't fit any known technology. Its power signature reads as infinite, but it doesn't emit radiation. It moves faster than light without distortion. It's as if it ignores physics itself." The Empress tilted her head slightly. "And the message?" "They said the return begins," Varen replied quietly. "We believe they were human." The Empress walked closer to the holo display, which showed the last recorded image of the silver ship. "Human," she repeated softly, as if testing the sound of it. "If that is true, then they are our ancestors." "Or our executioners," Rael said grimly. The Empress turned to him. "You still wish to fight?" "I will not bow to ghosts," he said. "If they are human, then they are nothing divine, just another power that bleeds like the rest." "Bleed?" she echoed. "Tell me, Admiral, how do you make something bleed when you cannot even see it?" Rael's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Varen stepped forward. "Majesty, they had every chance to destroy us, but they didn't. They could have wiped out the entire fleet. Instead, they only sent a message." The Empress studied him for a long moment. "A warning, perhaps. But warnings have meaning. What is it they want us to remember?" Arvin hesitated, then said, "There's something else, Majesty." He activated a small holo projector. On it appeared data fragments he had decoded from the ship's pulse. A faint image shimmered. Human faces, laughing around fire, water falling from the sky, green forests stretching into the horizon. "This is old Earth," Arvin said softly. "These are images from before spaceflight, before the Exodus. Somehow they have records of it. Perfect records." The Empress's expression softened, but only slightly. "Memories," she whispered. "They are showing us our beginning." "But why now?" Varen asked. "Why return after thousands of years?" Arvin shook his head. "Maybe they were watching us all along." The room fell silent again. Then the lights flickered. The holo displays glitched. A hum filled the chamber, low at first, then rising into a deep vibration that rattled the air. The guards raised their weapons. "Is this a power surge?" the Empress demanded. "No, Majesty," Arvin said, staring at the console. "It's them!" The holographic projector burst to life. A human face appeared, not a machine, not a recording, but a live transmission. A woman, perhaps in her 30s, eyes bright and calm, dressed in a simple white uniform marked only with the old Earth insignia. "This is Captain Ilara of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet," she said. "To the descendants of the Empire, greetings from Earth." Gasps filled the room. The Empress stepped closer. "You dare breach our chambers without consent?" The hologram smiled gently. "Consent was never yours to give, Your Majesty. The stars you rule were once ours." Rael's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Varen stopped him with a look. The Empress folded her hands. "What do you want?" "To correct history," Ilara said simply. "Your empire was not born by evolution. It was born by exile. Your ancestors abandoned Earth when it could no longer sustain life. They called themselves pioneers, but they left billions behind. That's a lie, Rael said harshly. Ilara's expression remained unchanged. You built an empire on forgetfulness, but we remembered. We rebuilt. And when we looked to the stars, we found your signal, our lost children ruling as gods. Varen stepped forward. Then why send one ship? Why not come openly? Because we are not conquerors, Ilara replied. We came to ask one question: will you remember who you were, or must we remind you? The hologram flickered as her face softened. Our fleet waits beyond your borders. You have time to choose. The image vanished. The room was silent. Only the hum of the projectors remained. Rael slammed his hand on the console. They're threatening us. I'll assemble the armada and— Enough, the Empress said sharply. An empire does not charge blindly into the unknown. We will respond carefully. She turned to Varen. You will form a diplomatic signal. I want to know what they seek. And if they refuse to answer? The Empress looked out the window again toward the glittering sky. Then we prepare for the return of our creators. Outside, in the darkness beyond the Imperial border, something vast moved. Sensors on distant moons detected dozens of identical signals flickering to life. Hundreds of ships emerging from nothingness. They didn't travel through jump gates or wormholes. They simply appeared, each one sleek, silent, and bearing the same symbol, Earth's crest. On every world of the Empire, people watched their skies and saw new stars forming, bright, white, and moving. Panic grew into awe into fear. In the depths of her command ship, Captain Ilara stood before a massive viewing window. Behind her, a fleet of Terran vessels stretched across the void, engines glowing like a sunrise. Transmit our presence to all frequencies, she ordered. Let them know. Humanity has returned. A quiet officer turned to her. And if they resist? Ilara's voice was calm, almost kind. Then they'll remember why the universe once feared humans. And far across the galaxy, as the Empire braced for what was coming, one truth became clear. The age of silence was over. The children of Earth were home again, and they had come not as ghosts, but as destiny. The following day, the Empire awoke to a sky filled with light. Every world under Imperial control, from the frozen colonies of the Outer Rim to the golden towers of Orion Prime, reported the same phenomenon. Hundreds of luminous streaks crossing the heavens. At first, they were mistaken for meteor showers, but soon the truth became undeniable. The Terran fleet had arrived. Commander Varen stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Citadel, watching the spectacle unfold through the transparent dome. Each streak moved with impossible precision, stopping exactly where it meant to. There was no chaos, no collisions, only order and intent. The Empire's fleet scrambled into formation, their engines glowing blue against the void, but no one dared to open fire. Arvin stood beside him, eyes wide. They're everywhere, he whispered. Every major sector shows a Terran vessel in orbit. Varen nodded. They're showing us how powerful they are. They didn't come to fight. They came to be seen. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with confusion and panic. Dozens of voices shouted over one another, demanding answers. Admiral Rael, pale but defiant, pounded the table. This is occupation without war. They've surrounded us. They haven't fired a shot, Varen replied. Not yet, Rael growled. But this is how wars begin. At the far end of the chamber, the Empress entered, her robe trailing behind her like silver fire. The room instantly fell silent. Status? She asked. Arvin spoke softly. Majesty, every ship reports visual contact. The Terrans have deployed throughout the core systems. No aggression detected. The Empress turned toward Varen. Have they spoken? Not since Captain Ilara's transmission, Majesty. Then perhaps, she said, they are waiting for us to answer. Rael stepped forward. Majesty, you cannot negotiate with ghosts. Their technology defies our understanding. They'll enslave us if we show weakness. Would you rather provoke them into destroying us? Varen countered. Better to die standing than kneeling to myths. Rael barked. The Empress raised her hand, silencing both men. Enough, we will not act in fear. We will send a message of peace. Prepare the transmission. Minutes later, across the entire Empire, every screen flickered. The Empress's image appeared, regal and composed. To the vessels claiming descent from Earth, she began. her voice calm but strong. You stand in the skies of the empire that your kind once built. We do not seek war. We request dialogue. If you are our ancestors, prove it through wisdom, not conquest. The message was sent into the void. For an hour there was nothing. No response. No movement. Then one by one the Terran ships dimmed their lights and aligned toward Orion Prime. The sky above the capital darkened as a shadow passed over the sun. A colossal ship, larger than any Imperial dreadnought, sliding into orbit. In the cold edge of the Empire's territory, a lonely space station drifted above a quiet moon. It was called Array 9, and its job was simple: listen. For decades it had picked up nothing but ordinary static, comets, and the hum of passing cargo ships, but on that night something different appeared. Technician Arvin was halfway through his coffee when the radar blinked once, then twice. A strange signal pulsed on his screen, faint but perfectly rhythmic. He frowned and tapped the console. The reading was clean. It wasn't interference. He zoomed in and the color drained from his face. The object was moving faster than any known ship. No identification code, no registration number, no origin, just a bright streak that should not exist. He called out for his supervisor. Within minutes, Commander Varen entered the control room. The commander was a serious man, calm even during asteroid alerts. He looked at the data and raised one eyebrow. Run a system check, he ordered. Arvin had already done it twice. The equipment was fine. Varen leaned closer to the glowing display. Speed reading? 22% above FTL limit, Arvin said quietly. That's not possible, Varen replied. No ship can move that fast, but the screen didn't lie. The object was coming straight toward Imperial space. The commander stood silently for a moment. Track it, he said. Do not broadcast any signal. I want observation only. Outside the station's long window, the stars looked peaceful, but the technicians knew what was hidden behind that peace. A shadow moving faster than anything ever recorded. As hours passed, the readings grew stronger. The craft's path was exact. It wasn't drifting. It was choosing. Reports started reaching the nearest Imperial fleet. Some officers laughed it off, saying it must be a ghost signal. Others took it seriously. The Empire had enemies, but none with such speed. Within the High Command, the Council debated whether to send a scout ship. In the end, they decided to wait. They wanted proof before panic. Back on Array 9, the tension grew heavier with every passing minute. The object's signal was now clear enough to show a faint outline, a single dot on a black field. No energy signature, no sound, no life signs. The computers tried to identify it but returned the same cold result every time. Unknown vessel. At 0200 hours, Arvin's screen flashed red. Commander, he said, voice trembling, it's slowing down. Varen turned sharply. Repeat that. It's losing speed, sir. Like it's stopping. The commander felt his throat go dry. Ships didn't just stop from faster than light travel. Even with the best gravity dampers, they needed distance to decelerate. But this thing came to a perfect halt within seconds. Prepare a signal probe, Varen ordered. Maybe it's friendly. The probe launched, shooting a coded Imperial greeting toward the silent craft. Everyone waited. The seconds dragged like hours. Then the probe's data returned, no response.
Not even static.
Send another, Varen said. A second probe went out. Again, nothing. It's ignoring us, whispered one technician. Another added nervously. Maybe it doesn't detect us. But Arvin was still staring at the readings. Sir, he said, it changed position. Just now. How? It jumped 100,000 kilometers instantly. Varen stepped forward. You mean it teleported? I don't know what to call it, sir. It moved faster than sensors could record. The commander looked around the room. Everyone had gone pale. The Empire had ruled the stars for 1,000 years, yet nothing in their history matched this. He ordered an encrypted transmission to the fleet command. This is Array 9, he said firmly. We have an unidentified craft inside the border. No data, no origin. Too fast to track. Far away in the capital city of Orion Prime, alarms began flashing in the war room. Admirals gathered around the holographic map, watching the tiny, blinking dot near the edge of known space. It wasn't large, barely the size of a destroyer, but its speed broke every model. The Empress herself was informed. Her advisors debated whether to classify it as a threat or a curiosity. The Empress said nothing. She simply ordered, observe. Do not engage. Back at Array 9, Arvin noticed something strange. In the static of the signal, a faint pattern repeated. Not numbers, not coordinates, letters. He adjusted the frequency. The pattern became clearer, forming shapes that looked almost like ancient symbols. He compared them to the archives, his fingers shaking. "Commander," he whispered, "I think it's a language." "Translate it." "I can't, it's old, very old." The commander frowned.
Old how?
Arvin hesitated. "Human, sir." The room fell silent. Humanity was a myth, a story told in schools about the species that vanished after the Great Exodus. The Empire claimed descent from them, but few believed humans still existed. The radar pinged again. The object moved closer, stopping just beyond the moon's orbit. Its image appeared as a glowing blur, smooth, silent, and shining faint blue. The commander whispered, "Is it scanning us?" "No power readings," Arvin said. "No weapons, no signals. Then what is it doing?" "Watching," Arvin replied softly. Hours passed, but the object remained motionless. The crew tried to keep working, but every mind in the room was fixed on that silent visitor. Some called it a ghost ship. Others said it was a probe from another dimension. None dared to say what they truly feared. Then, without warning, the station lights flickered. All systems froze for exactly 3 seconds. When power returned, the unknown vessel was gone. The screen showed empty space. "It disappeared?" Varen said sharply. "Not disappeared," Arvin answered, staring at the readout. "It moved again. Out of range. Too fast to follow." The commander exhaled slowly, then ordered all data sent to Central Command. But when Arvin tried to transmit, he noticed a small file hidden inside the data stream. It hadn't been there before. He opened it and froze. On his screen appeared a single word, glowing white against black background. Earth. Arvin couldn't breathe. The commander leaned in beside him, eyes widening. No one spoke. The word faded from the screen, leaving only silence and the hum of machines. Outside, the stars shone faintly across the dark sky. Somewhere far beyond them, the unknown craft continued its journey, faster than light, silent and unseen. And for the first time in generations, the Empire felt something it had forgotten long ago. Fear. Commander Varen stood at the observation deck, staring into the endless black sky. The word still glowed in his memory. Earth. It had vanished from the screen, but the silence it left behind stayed heavy in the air. The Empire had built itself on order, knowledge, and power. Yet now, one word from a forgotten species made them feel small again. Arvin sat alone at his console, replaying the data again and again. Every time the signal ended the same way. No distortion, no damage, no trace. The word had been deliberately placed. Someone, or something, wanted them to see it. He wanted to believe it was a trick. But deep down he knew the truth. The ship was real. The message was real. And if it truly came from Earth, then humanity had returned. By the next day, Array 9 was surrounded by Imperial cruisers. The fleet's flagship, ISS Dominion, took command of the region. Admiral Rail himself arrived, known across the stars as the man who had never lost a battle. He entered the control deck with 2 guards and a face that could freeze fire. "Show me the data," he said without greeting. Arvin obeyed, displaying the recorded flight path and the strange symbols. The Admiral watched quietly for a long time, then said, "Erase this from all open channels. Until I say otherwise, this is classified." Commander Varen frowned. "Sir, the Empress requested full transparency." "The Empress," Rail interrupted, "wants stability, not panic." He turned back to the screen, eyes narrowing. A ship with no data, no origin, and faster than light. It left us a message in a dead language. Either it's a test or a threat. Varen hesitated. "A threat from who?" Rail didn't answer. He just said, "Prepare an interception fleet." Within hours, 30 destroyers and 2 dreadnoughts formed a perimeter across the sector. Their orders were simple: locate the unknown craft and contain it. The fleet's sensors swept across every coordinate, but they found nothing. The ship had simply vanished. Some whispered it was cloaked. Others believed it had left the galaxy entirely. Arvin tried to get back to work, but his thoughts kept circling around that single word. He started digging into the Empire's oldest archives, long hidden files about pre-imperial history. Many were corrupted or sealed by order of the Council, but a few fragments remained. He found an old entry, thousands of years old, mentioning Project Exile. The file was damaged, but one line was clear: Humanity must survive. Beyond the stars, beyond the Empire. Arvin's hands trembled. What if the humans had never died? What if they had just left? Meanwhile, the fleet continued its silent search. Days passed. Then, just as the command crews began to relax, every radar lit up again. The unknown vessel had reappeared, this time inside the system. "Contact confirmed," shouted a voice on the bridge of the Dominion. "Object detected near the mining moon Gethar." Admiral Rail moved to the center of the room. "All ships converge. Hold fire until visual confirmation." Screens flickered with the image of the craft. It wasn't large. Sleek, dark silver with smooth armor reflecting the light of a distant sun. Its design was unlike anything Imperial engineers had ever built. No engines. No visible weapons. Just a silent body gliding effortlessly through vacuum. "You said..." The Emperor's palace trembled as energy waves rippled through the atmosphere. But again, there was no attack. Instead, a single beam of white light reached down from the Terran ship, connecting with the Citadel's upper tower. Inside the chamber, the light gathered into form. Captain Ilara appeared once more, projected in perfect detail, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "Your Majesty," she said, inclining her head, "we received your message. Dialogue is why we came." The Empress met her gaze. "Then speak." Ilara looked around the room at the gathered leaders. "You call yourselves an empire. You've conquered stars, enslaved worlds, erased your past. But before you were rulers, you were explorers, builders, humans. Our ancestors believed in unity, not domination. When Earth fell, we swore that if we ever returned, we would guide our lost kin back to that purpose." Rail stepped forward. "Guide us?" he said coldly. "You mean control us?" Ilara turned her eyes on him. "If we wished to control you, Admiral, there would be nothing left of your fleet." The Admiral fell silent. Varen spoke next. "Why now? Why after all these centuries?" Ilara's expression softened. "Because you were ready to destroy yourselves. We have seen your wars, your division, your hunger for power. You've forgotten what it means to belong to something greater. We watched, hoping you would remember, but you didn't." The Empress's voice trembled slightly, though her face remained composed. "And what do you intend to do?" Ilara paused. "We intend to remind you." At her words, the hologram brightened, and the room filled with imagery, memories of ancient Earth. Blue oceans, green forests, cities filled with laughter and art. Then the images changed: war, fire, and ruin. The oceans dried, the sky turned black. The room grew silent as they watched humanity's home die. "This," Ilara said quietly, "is what forgetting costs." The hologram faded, leaving only her standing there, radiant and still. "We will not destroy your empire, but we will not allow it to continue as it is. You will rebuild, not as rulers but as guardians. The age of empires is over. The age of humanity begins again." Rail clenched his fists. "And if we refuse?" Ilara's gaze hardened and her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Then you will meet the rest of the fleet." A low rumble filled the skies above Orion Prime. Every Terran ship glowed brighter, their energy signatures pulsing like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Across the Empire, sensors screamed with warnings, yet still not a single weapon fired. The message was clear, they didn't need to. The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she said softly, "If we surrender our crown, will you let our people live?" Ilara hesitated. "We are not here for your crown, Majesty. We are here for your soul." And with that, her image vanished. The Empress stood motionless, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time in her reign, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel: hope. "Commander," she said finally, "prepare a message to all citizens of the Empire." Varen bowed his head. "What shall we tell them, Majesty?" She looked out toward the heavens where the Terran fleet shone like 1,000 suns. "Tell them," she said softly, "that the Empire's age is ending. Tell them humanity has come home." Far beyond the capital, inside the great Terran flagship Eden's Dawn, Captain Ilara watched the Empire's signal being sent. Her officers stood in silence. "Will they accept?" one asked quietly. Ilara turned to the viewing window where the light of Orion Prime reflected in her eyes. "They don't need to accept," she said. "They only need to remember." And as the Terran fleet began to move once more, spreading across the stars, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in thousands of years, humanity was united again, not through conquest, but through remembrance. Dawn came late to Orion Prime. The sun rose, but its light was dimmed by the silhouettes of Terran ships orbiting the planet. Their silver hulls caught the morning glow, gleaming like quiet gods watching from the heavens. Every citizen who looked up that day saw the same sight, the end of an era. Inside the Imperial Citadel, the Empress stood before a long balcony overlooking the capital. The streets below were filled with silence. No markets opened, no banners waved. The people were waiting, unsure whether to celebrate or fear. Across the Empire's broadcast networks, her voice echoed softly, steady but tired. Citizens of the Empire. The stars above us no longer belong to us alone. Humanity, our origin, has returned. The Terran fleet stands not as conquerors, but as witnesses to what we've become. Today we must decide what we will be tomorrow. Her words spread across every colony, every mining world, every ship. Some fell to their knees in reverence. Others cursed her name for surrender. But no one ignored it. The galaxy had changed, and no one could pretend otherwise. Down in the Citadel's lower command deck, Commander Varen and Arvin watched the transmission in silence. The young technician looked pale. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked quietly. "They have to," Varen replied. "There's no weapon strong enough to fight memory." Moments later, a new signal interrupted the broadcast. The screens flickered and shifted to a different feed. The image of Captain Alara aboard the Terran flagship Eden's Dawn. She stood before her own people, her uniform shining under white light. "Brothers and sisters of Earth," she said, "our return is complete. But we are not saviors. We are reminders. These descendants forgot who they were, but they are still human. And humans can learn." In that moment, two leaders, separated by time, united by blood, spoke to the same sky. One spoke of surrender, the other of renewal. Between them stretched the fragile thread of hope. Admiral Rail, however, saw none of that. He stood on the bridge of the ISS Dominion, his fists clenched behind his back. "Hope," he muttered, "is for dreamers." His crew looked uneasy. "Sir," said Captain Soren carefully, "the Empress has forbidden any aggression. The Terrans haven't fired a single shot." Rail's voice hardened. "They don't need to. They've already invaded our skies, our minds, our history. Every empire dies when it stops believing in itself." He turned toward the command console. "Prepare the Eclipse drive." Gasps filled the room. The Eclipse drive was an experimental superweapon, illegal even by Imperial law. A device capable of collapsing space within a system, destroying anything caught inside. "Sir, that would kill millions," Soren protested. "Better martyrs than slaves," Rail said coldly. "We end this before they end us," he gave the order. Back on Eden's Dawn, sensors screamed with alarms. "Captain," said one officer, "we're detecting a gravitic buildup near Orion Prime. It's artificial." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to detonate a singularity. How long?" 2 minutes, maybe less." "Get me the Citadel," she commanded. The Empress appeared on the holographic screen, her face pale. "What have they done?" "Your admiral intends to destroy your own capital," Ilara said. "He'd rather erase his empire than let it remember." The Empress turned sharply to Varen. "Find him." But it was too late. From orbit, the Dominion's engines flared and the Eclipse drive began to spin. Space itself rippled like a broken mirror. Ships nearby struggled to hold position as their sensors went blind. A thin thread of light curved inward toward the heart of the planet. Inside the command bridge, Rail stood tall, eyes cold. "For the Empire," he whispered. The light turned white. Then nothing. At least that's what should have happened. Instead, the light froze. The distortion halted mid-air, caught as if by an invisible hand. Every ship, every console, every system stopped moving. Even gravity seemed to vanish. Then a deep sound filled the void, like the heartbeat of a giant. From the shadow of the Eden's Dawn, a smaller Terran ship emerged, glowing with pure energy. It moved between the Dominion and Orion Prime, and with a simple pulse it absorbed the entire energy wave. The singularity collapsed, harmlessly vanishing into light. On the Dominion, alarms fell silent. The Admiral's console went dark. What did they do?" one officer stammered. A voice filled the bridge, calm, familiar, human. "You've forgotten that power without purpose is nothing." Rail looked up. The holographic form of Captain Alara appeared before him. You sought glory, she said softly, but all you built was fear. He tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. You think you can take my empire? Elara's expression didn't change. We're not taking it. We're giving it back, to the people you buried beneath your pride. With that, the Dominion system shut down completely. Rail fell to his knees, the weight of silence crushing him. Across the system, the Terran ships activated in unison. Beams of light reached down to every planet, not as weapons but as signals, streams of ancient data, art, and knowledge. Old Earth languages, music, and history poured into Imperial archives. Schools, libraries, and terminals filled with memories of the past that had been lost for centuries. Citizens watched in awe as the skies above their worlds glowed with constellations shaped like ancient human symbols. Children pointed upward, tracing the old letters they had never known. On Orion Prime, Varen stood beside the Empress on the balcony. The city was quiet, bathed in white light. They're not destroying us, he said softly. They're teaching us. The Empress watched the heavens, her face calm. Maybe this is what true power looks like, she whispered. The power to heal. From orbit, Captain Elara stood in silence as her ship's AI reported the transmission complete. All systems stable, said her officer. Night returned to Orion Prime, but it was no longer dark. The sky shimmered with soft white light as if a new constellation had taken root above the planet. Each Terran ship glowed faintly, casting their radiance across the oceans and spires below. The Empire, once proud and unchallenged, now stood under the watchful eyes of its ancestors. In the Imperial Citadel, silence had replaced chaos. The Empress sat alone in the grand chamber, the weight of centuries pressing on her shoulders. The empire she had inherited was vast, but now she saw it clearly for what it was, a fragile shadow of something ancient and human. She stared at the glowing horizon, remembering the words Captain Elara had spoken. We came to remind you. A soft chime broke her thoughts. Commander Varen entered quietly, his expression serious but calm. Majesty, he said, bowing. The transmission from the Terran fleet continues. They're sending more data. History, science, languages. It's being received on every world at once. The Empress nodded. And the people? They're changing, Varen said slowly. Some worship the Terrans. Others fear them. But most, listen. The Empress stood and walked toward the balcony. The air shimmered faintly with static energy, remnants of the Terran signal. Listening, she murmured, something this empire forgot how to do long ago. From far above, aboard the Terran flagship Eden's Dawn, Captain Elara observed the Empire's capital through a massive viewing pane. Her fleet was quiet now, holding position like guardians of a reborn world. A holographic image flickered beside her, the face of her fleet's science officer, Lieutenant Marek. Captain, he said, the transmissions are being received on all channels. But there's interference in the core colonies, some kind of military encryption. Elara frowned. Admiral Rail again? Possibly. His ship went dark after the Eclipse Drive incident, but some elements of the fleet may still follow him. They believe surrendering to us is betrayal. Elara folded her hands behind her back. Every empire clings hardest to its pride before it falls. Keep scanning. If Rail resurfaces, I want to know. As the transmission ended, she turned back to the window. Through the silence, she could almost feel the heartbeat of the old world echoing through the stars. Back on Orion Prime, Arvin worked through endless streams of Terran data. His console glowed with strange, ancient symbols, maps of forgotten constellations, human DNA records, old blueprints of machines powered not by energy, but by ideas. Each file he opened revealed something wondrous, something impossibly old yet strangely familiar. He stopped at a file labeled The Lost Code. When he opened it, his eyes widened. It wasn't a weapon or design. It was a message, one recorded by Earth's last scientists before their planet fell. To those who inherit the stars, if you forget compassion, you forget humanity. The future is not built on conquest, but on courage. Arven leaned back in his chair, his heart racing. He copied the message and sent it to the Empress. Moments. Later, the chamber filled with the soft voice from the file. As the words played, even the guards stood still. When the message ended, the Empress whispered, "They're not here to conquer us. They're here to make sure we don't become what they once were." Commander Varen nodded. Maybe this is the second beginning. But not everyone agreed. In a hidden sector far beyond Orion Prime, a fleet of black ships drifted near the edge of known space. Admiral Rael stood at the command deck of the crippled Dominion, surrounded by loyal officers who had refused to surrender. The ship's lights flickered weakly, but its engines still burned with defiance. "Let them preach peace," Rael said, staring at the projection of the Terran fleet. "They came dressed as gods, but they're no different from us. Sooner or later they'll demand obedience." Captain Soren, now visibly weary, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, the Eclipse drive failed. They could have destroyed us, but they didn't. Maybe it's time to listen." Rael's eyes hardened. "You think mercy means trust?" "No, Captain. Mercy is the first step of control. I will not watch my empire kneel to ghosts." He turned toward his crew. "Prepare the Shadow Protocol." Soren's face paled. "That's suicide." Rael smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's what it takes to make history remember your name." The Shadow Protocol was the Empire's last forbidden weapon, a field generator capable of swallowing energy and light, turning space into a dead zone. If activated, it could erase an entire sector from existence. Rael intended to use it on the Terran fleet. But as his engineers began the sequence, the Dominion's sensors flared. A silver light appeared outside the viewport. A Terran vessel, smaller than the Eden's Dawn but pulsing with quiet power, drifted toward them. "Contact detected," shouted an officer. Before anyone could react, a voice filled the bridge, calm, patient, familiar. "Admiral Rael," said Captain Alara, her voice echoing through the air. "Turn off the device. You're about to destroy millions of your own people." Rael laughed bitterly. "And if I refuse?" "Then you will prove every fear humanity ever had about itself," Alara said. "You will prove that our return was necessary." "Don't lecture me," Rael shouted. "You think you're better than us? You think being ancient makes you pure?" "No," Alara said softly. "It makes us responsible." A moment of silence passed between them, stretching across the stars. Then Alara spoke again, her tone gentle but firm. "Admiral, you still have a choice. Don't let your pride bury what's left of your people." Rael stared at the glowing console before him. The activation countdown blinked, 10 seconds. His hand hovered over the final command. He could feel the weight of history pressing on him. One action, one defiance, could define him forever. But for the first time in his life, he hesitated. On the screen, Alara looked at him not with anger but with sorrow. "You're still human, Rael," she said quietly. "Act like it." The Admiral closed his eyes. The countdown reached 1. Then with a trembling hand he shut the system down. The bridge fell silent. The hum of the generator faded. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Soren exhaled shakily. He stopped it. Alara's hologram smiled faintly. "Welcome back, Admiral." Rael looked up, tears glinting in his eyes. "I thought strength meant never bowing," he said softly. "But maybe it means knowing when to stop." Alara nodded. "That's the lesson we all had to learn." As the Terran ship turned away, the Dominion's crew watched in silence. For the first time they felt peace, not the peace of victory but of understanding. Far above, the Terran fleet began its final transmission. Across every world of the Empire, a message appeared on every screen, every radio, every whisper of static. "You are not our subjects. You are our legacy. Protect what we could not. The stars are yours again." And just like that, one by one, the Terran ships began to fade into light, their presence dissolving into the starlit void. On Orion Prime, the Empress watched as the last vessel vanished beyond the clouds. She turned to Varen and smiled faintly. "They reminded us," she said softly. "Now it's our turn to remember." And as dawn rose once more, brighter than before. The empire began to rebuild, not for conquest, but for something far greater. Humanity had returned and left behind not rulers but heirs,